Morning, it's Jason Renault with the Alternative Mobile Services Association and AMSA Talks. Today we're with Tracey Frisch. Hey, Tracey,
Hi. Thank you for having me.
welcome to AMSA Talks. And
Thank
Tracey
you.
is with the American Arbitration Association and the foundation that the association funds. Welcome. And Tracey, tell us a little bit about how you got here and about your association.
Sure. Um, so I am the executive director of the AAA ICDR Foundation.
Oh,
I also,
slow down. You gave us a bunch of acronyms right there.
okay. I am the executive director of the American Arbitration Association's foundation. We call ourselves AAA ICDR Foundation, AAA for the American Arbitration Association, and ICDR for the International Center for Dispute Resolution, which is our international division of the American Arbitration Association. And I have been involved in the foundation since it was created in 2015. And I have been with the American Arbitration Association since, I think 2008. I started as a member of the legal department. I'm a lawyer by training. And earlier this year, I stepped into a new role at the American Arbitration Association as their division vice president for mediation. So I run
Hmm.
all of the mediation business for the association. But the reason I was pulled into the foundation when it started, I think, is because of my background. I was actually a peer mediator in high school, so I
Hmm.
started at a very early age into this area of mediation. And then I worked at nonprofits before going to law school, teaching conflict resolution and peer mediation in schools, and also as a peer mediator in community mediation centers in and around New York. So my background is in nonprofit and mediation. And so becoming part of the foundation when it was started by the association was sort of a natural
Natural.
fit for me. And something I very much have enjoyed seeing grow over the 10 years of funding. We'll be approaching our 10th year of funding in 2026.
Oh,
And it's grown a lot. In the first year, I think we funded about maybe $150,000 in grants, and this past year, over $2 million in grants. So we have rapidly expanded, thank you to the support of the American Arbitration Association and to the arbitrators and mediators who are part of the American Arbitration Association and donors to the foundation. So we've been very lucky in our ability to be solidly funded and supported by the American Arbitration
now,
Association.
out here in the nonprofit world, we're always wondering, how does philanthropy work? How do you really make those decisions? And, how do you, all these different requests for support, how does
Mhm.
that work?
So it's not always easy. When we started off, we had a very broad scope of what we wanted to fund. Wanted to create access to alternative dispute resolution. That's always been our mission. But we started off very broadly, thinking about access to ADR. There's so many things that could fall under that umbrella. And as we've matured as a foundation, we've really been asking ourselves, where do we think, with our level of funding, where can we have the most impact?
Hmm.
And so we really wanted to narrow our focus to be able to say, okay, here's a place where we feel like we can help move the needle and we have some expertise, so we know a little bit about what we're talking about, in this area. And so that is how we have really honed in on our current focus area, which is to invest in programs that incorporate mediation into alternative crisis response. So that's the area that we're currently looking at. But it's never easy making funding decisions. It's never an easy thing.
Now, it makes so much sense to add mediation to alternative response. And when we think about the Dayton program in Ohio, everybody thinks, well, why has that's not being replicated? Why aren't
Exactly.
others picking this up? So
Mhm.
now you're going to provide some support to make this happen.
Yeah, that's the idea. So we started funding the Dayton program a few years ago. They had already existed. We didn't create it. I don't want to take credit for that at all. They did that themselves. But we helped fund some additional expansion, to them to expand their hours, them to help gather better data, sharing data, providing some additional wraparound resources, for their field mediation unit. So, but I do see Dayton as a proof of concept. It is working there. They have field mediators, people trained as mediators, responding to 911 calls, and helping the community sort of not just with that individual conflict, but I think gain trust in the entire system. Showing up to a dispute, having someone come who's, doesn't have a gun, isn't looking to arrest anyone, but is saying, I'm here to help you resolve this dispute and make it so you don't have to call back 2 weeks from now, a month from now. Like, let's figure out what is really at the root of what is causing this issue. And let's try and see if we can't resolve it. And I just think, it's I'm obviously a firm believer in mediation. And I love this idea of innovating mediation. So traditionally, mediation has been something where people seek it out, right? The parties dispute seek out mediation. They're going to mediation. They're agreeing to mediation. They're coming, sitting at a table, with the mediator. Here, it's very different. Here, you have the issue and you have mediation coming to meet the parties where they're at. A very different structure of mediation than parties who are agreeing to mediation and coming to sit down at a mediation table with the mediator, expecting, to try and come to some kind of negotiated agreement. So I just love sort of the innovation of this program.
So when I first called the Dayton program, I said, well, what do you do with the blah, blah, blah? And they said, what, wait a second. You have to understand. Our problem is this. It's the rooster. The neighbor, somebody's bought a rooster in the neighborhood and it's cock-a-doodle-doo at 4 o'clock in the morning. The police come by and they say, we don't want to have anything to do with this. This is not our business. Send in the mediation team to talk to the neighbors. We can't have a rooster. And it just made so much sense.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, obviously mediation is not going to be for all call types, right? I mean, there are still absolutely call types that need other kinds of alternative responders, that need law enforcement, but let's sort of let law enforcement do what they do best, right? And not have to spend the time on these kind of calls where really parties are looking for someone to listen and to hear them and to sort of help them figure out next steps. That's not what police are there to do. They don't have time for that. But mediators are. That's exactly what they're there to do. So I agree that there are certain call types, and that's part of what we want to be exploring, under our focus area of sort of what are those call types? What is the system to have these call types be named and coded and used for mediation. I think that's one area that's very much needed in the sort of alternative response if we're going to have mediation be an option for alternative response.
And there's so many areas where, training and educating the community about mediation would make sense. Why did you pick mobile crisis alternative response as the place to put your money?
Yeah, I think we felt like this has the potential to have a big impact, right? I was surprised when we started really researching and learning about 911 call centers and how they operate, not only the volume of calls that they receive, but the types of calls. Like, people call 911 when they don't know who else to call. It could be anything. It could be, I don't have food in the house, call 911. It could be my neighbor's rooster, call 911. It could be, really so many different things that it's a lot of people's sort of only resource for trying to get help with so many different things. So we felt like, and seeing Dayton really was, the spark for this, seeing that this could work and this could help, society on a very large level and have a very big impact if we're able to scale this across alternative response systems that already exist. It was very heartening to learn that alternative crisis response, it is new and growing, but it is there. There are so many communities that are doing it and doing it really, really well, that I think layering in mediation, whether it's like Dayton is doing as sort of a separate call type, a separate responder who's trained as a mediator, or layering it in as alternative responders who are already responding to calls to get trained in mediation, to have another skill set to bring to these call responses.
Now, it's early days in this change
Mhm.
for you, in this honing in on alternative response, but do you have some sense of the plan at this point?
So the plan is really to help promote mediation and grow this proof of concept and really grow oh, an ecosystem around having mediation as part of alternative response. So part of it is going to be helping to promote mediation to those who
Mhm.
are already in the alternative response field to say, hey, have you thought about mediation? Layering it into what you're already doing and providing assistance to those who are interested in doing it. Okay, what do you need? Providing some technical assistance for layering in mediation into alternative response. Um, Another part of it that we're really interested in looking at is the 911 system. I think that'll probably be the most difficult area to really get traction in, but it's something, we are very interested in being part of, which is how do we help 911 systems, which are very different depending on where you are in the country, um, get comfortable, and how do we build trust in a mediation response? How do you code calls, that are appropriate for a mediation response? Looking at the Dayton system, and I know it's very specific to Dayton. When the calls come in, they're plugged into the 911 system. They can refer calls to themselves. Does that model make sense in other places? Does it not? But really creating some resources that and proof of concept, some studies, some research in the 911 area to help bring mediation in as part of that alternative response.
One of the things we've seen with both mobile crisis and alternative response is scaling issues.
Hmm.
Dayton is a city of, I don't know, 200,000 people. We also, have a city just a few miles away, Cleveland, which has 1 million people. How,
Hmm.
how does do you have any thoughts about scaling mediation? How many, what sort, where how do you deploy it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a matter of resources, and
Mhm.
we want to be one of those resources, again, sort of for the technical assistance. Like if Cleveland already has an alternative response, and they want to layer in mediation,
Mhm.
is it a matter of providing that training, providing the funding to get that training and mediation and support for alternative responders to learn and be trained as mediators?
Mhm.
Is it a matter of supporting? There's so many also local community mediation centers too. Sort of Dayton was built out of a community mediation centers. They exist all over the country. Now, there's certainly a training gap between being a community mediator, who again is sort of sitting down with people expecting to mediate, and being a field mediator who's going and responding to 911. There's absolutely training that needs to happen in order to make someone go from mediator used to sitting at a table with folks to mediator going to respond to 911 calls. So we also want to be there to help with that and support that technical assistance that'd be needed, that training that would be needed to get folks the skills that they would need to be able to respond.
And of course, your foundation can't fund everything all the
Mhm.
time in every city. So, will you also be giving some political skills about how to talk to city councils and county commissions about funding this?
Yeah, I think a lot of um, what you need in order to try and sell this is data, right? So we want to help create those proofs
I
of
see.
concept,
Yeah.
to show people like, here's the research, here's the numbers, it works. This makes financial sense. This makes sense, in terms of community engagement, community trust, here's all the positives, that can come out of creating a program like this in order to help convince those folks in power that this is worthwhile investing in. So that's really what we want to try and help create and disseminate and build. We also have been in conversations with other funders. So we are also hoping to co-fund things, and
Hmm.
sort of join together with other funders in this space. So we're also trying to see sort of what are they interested in, can we sort of build on what they're doing and make it stronger, if we partner.
Well, I can just imagine as you're speaking, every municipal judge in America blessing you, saying, "Oh, thank God they're here," and you should hit them up for some money.
Yeah, no, it's hard. I mean, I think that I understand like budgets are scarce. Particularly in these days, it's like a lot of cuts coming down. And I think again, it's important to show the folks who are drafting those budgets and approving those budgets why this makes financial
Right.
sense. I think that ultimately it's going to come down to the financial sense of this type of program, and two, the positive outcomes for community trust in, what I see 911 as sort of a form of civic engagement, right? I mean, you're sort of trusting your government,
Hmm.
right, to have your back,
Yeah.
and that trust has been diminished. So in order to put something in place, or to be able to put something in place to help build that trust, I also think that that would be important to government officials as well.
Well, thank you, Tracey Frisch, and thank you to the American Arbitration Association and the foundation. This is great news. We need this help, and we're just glad that you're here to help us.
Yes, thank you. And if you want to find out more about the foundation, I encourage you to go to our website, which is aaaicdrfoundation.org. And we are also active on LinkedIn. So you can check out our website, check out our LinkedIn. We have a quarterly newsletter that we send out that you can subscribe to through our website, so you can see what we're up to. And I would love to, stay in touch, and for your members to sort of follow us and know what we're doing, and reach out if there are projects, that they think would fit, into this area. We're interested in hearing from you. Our email is contact@aaaicdrfoundation.org. So please do reach out if you are part of a municipality that wants to implement mediation as part of your alternative response. Please let us know. We'd be interested in hearing from you.
And we'll put the links for the website, the LinkedIn page, and the email address in the chat, in the narrative box below here on YouTube.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you for all the work that you do. It's really, I love learning more and more about everyone who's sort of part of this alternative response space. It's been a wonderful education.
Thanks, Tracey.